Well, I just wanted to point out that I don't just talk to these videos. I don't just talk to the videos. I talk to my friends and people that I know and people that trust me. They don't think I'm crazy at all. They really don't. The world thinks I'm crazy because nobody wants to hear the bad stuff. They all want to hear, well, I go to church every Sunday. I'm okay, dude. I'm not worried about it. That's why the Bible lists so few actually going to heaven. I mean, I don't believe the interpretation. I believe what the words say. The words say there's 144,000. It says that in Revelation. 144,000 souls redeemed to heaven. 144,000. One of my designs could carry at least 100,000. Otherwise, there ain't no getting off this earth unless you're a spirit. It's a wondrous universe. People like, where's all the aliens at? They don't talk to us because they know this planet's the dump and recycling plant until people get it right. We've all been reborn and reborn and reborn. All of us. Even the devils get reborn. Some of them. The major of them are already stuck and bound. And all that shit's like ghosts and stuff. But the difference between our kind of ghost is basically like a dream. And people have encountered ghosts. Everybody's encountered ghosts. You get the chills and the spooks sometimes. Most people have had nightmares and night terrors where you wake up and you think something's there. Well, that's a ghost. It really is. It's not a figment of your imagination. It's a spirit. But they can't really hurt us. They're mischievous things at the most. They're the reasons why sometimes you lose your keys when you knew you set them right there. Did you search all over? Running late for work. Kids are having fits. You're like, where's the keys? Where's the keys? Where's the keys? And then you relax for a minute. Take a breather. Wife runs by and kisses you. And you turn around, look, and there's the keys. Those keys weren't there. The ghost can actually take them into like an interdimensional place the same way as the UFO things do. It's the ether. It's like a mirror. Almost. But unless you're a godly angel, there's only one way through that mirror for us, and that's death. It's the only way to get the other side of that mirror. And I've been there. I kind of forced my way in, but God had mercy on me because I have a mission and I can't die until I know for sure that mission is done. So I can make a lot of these videos, but I don't just talk to the camera. I run all this stuff by my friends, and my friend Dylan, he's the one that said these are like sermons, and that's exactly what they are. They're sermons, but they're not sermons that most people want to hear because people just want to believe the fairy tale version of it. And I'm not saying the Bible is a fairy tale, but it is a fairy tale that all you got to do is hear about Jesus and you get into heaven. Most churches preaches you only need to be baptized once. I baptize myself on a regular basis. On a regular basis, I'll go to the lake at night when it's alone and I'm in solitude, and I'll stand about ankle deep in the water, and I'll say some solemn prayers, especially after I've been repenting and crying for some sinful things. Since I'm about dead, I've been repenting a lot. And I repented before once and killed myself and was dead for 8 hours, and I kind of forced myself into heaven. I thought I was going to hell, but actually I got a quite amazing grand tour. Similar to the book of Enoch. I've seen it. What it says in the book of Enoch, he was there. And if you read the book of Enoch, they brought him back to his family and told them to watch over him and to note his condition, because it took him a year to recover before they could come and take him again on an earthly mission. But they actually took him to the other side. It showed him. But it took a hurting on him, man. It took him a year to recover. Well, when I killed myself, it took me a couple years to recover, and amazingly, the doctor thought I was going to die from infection because I laid on the ground and kept getting up and falling down and getting up and falling down and getting up and falling down. And I laid there all night long. It was still daylight when I died, and when I woke up, I don't know, I heard my mom calling my voice, Chris, Chris. She was still alive at the time, but it was my mom's voice calling me. I opened my eyes, there's a white light. I remember very vividly where I lay crumpled. I got up like a zombie and just started walking and following that light, and it was like woods. There was no trail, no nothing. And people don't want to hear that. They're like, oh dude, you're just delusional because you had blood loss. No. I've told this story to so many doctors and psychiatrists, and they can't get, well, you kill yourself. I wasn't really depressed or nothing. I really believe in God. And, you know, I've done some stuff that I just really felt that, you know, I can't just continue my life and be that kind of sinner. And I had a lot of sins, and especially when I was young, I did some pretty horrible sins that figured was guaranteed to get me in hell because I know the Bible. And I've done some bad stuff. Really bad stuff that I don't really want to talk about. But people play with pentagrams and stuff, and that shit ain't no joke. You're cursing your souls to hell forever. And I almost did too. I killed myself thinking that I was going to hell anyways, and I was just such a worthless hurting people all the time that might as well be dead. Then I cut myself. I cut myself, passed out, woke up, cut myself again until I bled out and passed out, woke up, cut myself again until I bled out, passed out, woke up. Like 18 times I did that until I finally died. Forced my way into heaven, got a grand tour. Heaven is a miraculous place. It is wonderful. One of the sins of my youth before I died and learned the truth. I thought, what a boring existence to just sit in heaven and sing glory and glory, glory to the Lord for all eternity. And now that's all I want to do. I would love nothing more than to bask in His glorious magnificence. Okay? God is real. And He don't love just anybody. How can you love somebody you don't even know? Most people don't talk to God, they talk at God, or they beg to God. God, why? God, please help me. God, please help me with this. God, please, I need this money. God, please, heal me from this illness. But how much offering and stuff do they give to God? Do you think it counts just because you go and sit in a building and listen to some guy talk for an hour about one little line in the Bible? I talk about the whole entirety of the religion, not one narrow view that's only the part that people want to hear. The reason why they repeat that stuff year after year after year is because if you vary away from it or get into anything that makes people uncomfortable, they don't want to hear that. People just want to be happy. And there's going to be so many ghosts that don't get to go to heaven just simply because they didn't really get it. They thought that they could do whatever they wanted because Jesus was murdered for them. That is not at all what the intention was. That's what we've been led to believe for centuries. 4 centuries. 2,000 years. The Catholics started that. The Greeks actually wrote the first Bible, but the Catholics adapted it, and they were among the chief most editors of the first edition. The Greeks got a pretty good edition. I like the book of Esdras. It's actually Esdras, but when I read Esdras and got to the 2nd chapter, I realized that they were the same book. They actually took one whole chapter out of the Bible. You tell any kind of preacher that and they're like, that Bible's perfect. It don't need nothing more than what's in it. And that's why there's even going to be a lot of preachers probably that are going to be shocked to find out that it takes a little more than that. The preacher himself doesn't even read the whole Bible. He memorizes lines from a script and follows cues week by week. And he just tells the same scripts over and over and over and is incapable of learning any new scripts. I don't have that problem. I can pretty much quote you all kinds of anything on the Bible, and some of it I know so intimately is the parts that is missing. During the time of the exile, the Jews ended up in exile to begin with, and they took that part out of the book of Ezra. They cut that part out, and they begin with when they were released from bondage. How did they get into bondage? Well, they had a king, and for whatever reason, he got bug up his ass, and he decided to have a grand Passover. He was in the mood for a big party, and they used their technology, because Jews had technology. They didn't have it in the second temple because it ended up with Nebuchadnezzar and then eventually got destroyed, except for the batteries. And it's what they were using the batteries for, was the temple. Those aren't Baghdad batteries, they're Jew batteries. Nebuchadnezzar took them to Baghdad. And they got the dates all messed up on that because they're dating them on whatever stuff was with it when they were buried. And they were there for a while before they got buried. And that's a big part of the problem too, the dating this stuff, is because they don't know what to use as a date. They just pick up a fragment of something and say, oh, well, this fragment is from this period, that's when it's from. And no, they could have been mixed or mingled, or that older one could have been carried around for centuries and dropped on top of a fragment that was newer. People don't want to get that. You got a layer of all these fragments 5,000 years old, and then you find something in that layer and you assume they're all 5,000 years old. Well, those batteries could have been 7,000 years old. The date's all screwed up on all of it. Pretty soon it's not going to matter. But anyways, you had a grand Passover, and what they did was they used their altar of perpetual fire. Okay, well, that's an altar. That means that was the surface for the sacrifice, and of perpetual fire. Everybody assumed, well, that just means they kept throwing logs on it. No. Because perpetual means that it was always hot. And if they had 1 to 2 volt batteries and they had hundreds and thousands of them, and they could easily drain them out and uncork them and dump them and mix them and do a ritual, and as they move them around, shake them a little bit, agitate them, and ground them out on the corners or whatever, that hot plate, and they get it hot enough to cook. Hell yeah, you can solder metal, maybe even weld certain things with AA batteries. That's 1.5 volts. So it makes sense if you had enough of them and a big enough charge, as long as you just kept grounding them out and grounding them out and grounding them out and recycling them, you'd get that sucker hot and it'd stay hot. And that was part of their ritual, and they'd burn the offerings on the altar. Now, people say burn. Well, they burn it to a crisp. That's a modern interpretation. You have to actually read the book, and the part they took out that explains what the burnt offering was. Okay? And they put all the meat, after they prepared it in the kosher way and cut the portions, and they burned it on the altar of perpetual fire in honor to God, along with the fruit of the field and various vegetables and fragrant seasonings and spices that please the Lord. And then they took it and put it into bronze kettles, which also could have been got hot with the batteries, grounding them out on it. And they made a stew. They said they made a hearty, rich stew. And day and night, all throughout the Passover, the Levite priests would take them kettles, probably had big poles on them, and they'd walk around, and they would dish out whoever wanted. Just find the priest, call him, and go and fill your bowls. And they did that day and night all throughout the Passover. You had nothing to hunger, with a rich, hearty meal. And that's how they prepared for the war. Because after that, the scouts told them a Pharaoh was on the move, coming north towards Nebuchadnezzar. And the Hebrews and the Pharaoh had a lot of problems anyways for centuries. And they edited all that shit, changed it. That's why people don't want to hear what I have to say. And I'm here to correct the truth. I'm here to correct the truth. And I can't die until I got acknowledgement, at least in some form, some way, that humanity gets it. Otherwise, I can keep living with this cancer another 10 years. God will just send it around in a different area. And the tumor will get this big and grow this way, and I'll still be walking, working, whatever. Because He's God. I can't die until He allows me to die. So I'm going to keep talking until I die to these cameras, and hopefully somebody someday reads it, because I believe in God, and assuming eventually somebody's going to get this shit. And you guys got to get it right. Otherwise the thing's going to fall apart. As soon as they go against God, angels will just smite it, and they'll let this planet go back to the Stone Age. They'll wipe it out and turn it back into a reptilian planet, because they're like multi-species beings of every DNA. And I mean, they got no qualms. Anything's food, really. I mean, I wouldn't want to eat a human, but they're not human. We pretty much eat anything that's not us, and so does everything else in the universe. We're not all there is. But anyways, Josiah, he went out to meet the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh told him no. This is a big misconception in the Bible, which is why I brought that point up as this next part. He said, for God is with me. God has commanded me to go against Nebuchadnezzar because he's evil, and we need to smite him, or something like that. That ain't the exact words, but that was about the gist of it. Pharaoh was going against Babylon, and God had his back. Okay, back then the pyramids would each one be over different cities or whatever, and they'd go around and they'd direct shit, and they'd motivate people to get it on and go to war, because the angels like a good blood fight anyways. And Josiah laughed at him because he just had this grand ass Passover. He's like, oh, God has your back. We just used our miraculous perpetual fire, dude. We had the baddest Passover forever. Take this. And he went and attacked the Pharaoh. Now, I'm sure the Pharaoh turned his troops or whatever, and they were using enemy areas, so they weren't even that close, and they marshaled their troops, and they're about getting it on. Nebuchadnezzar, well, he took the opportunity to come out, and he harassed the Israelis from the side, caused them to be routed. And Josiah almost died. He had to get on a second chariot. He made it back to Jerusalem and died there. And the Pharaoh chased him and harassed him all the way, cutting down the Israeli troops. And Josiah died, so the Pharaoh appointed a governor, and the governor was evil. Now, sometime around on that, Nebuchadnezzar kicked shit out of the Pharaoh and submitted him, and he heard about that evil governor, so he came in and he sacked Jerusalem, and he put a second governor on there. Or maybe the Pharaoh came back again. I think the Pharaoh did 2 of the governors. Anyways, by the third governor, Nebuchadnezzar got involved, and he bound that governor in bronze chains and bound all the Israelis in chains. He totally destroyed the city. He tore down the temple, and he ordered the Levites to take all their holy relics and all that they had in the temple, and to assemble it in his temple, and to perform their rites and rituals for him. And that's why the batteries are in Baghdad, folks. Okay. That's how they ended up in exile. This Nebuchadnezzar is the one that tore down the temple, Solomon's temple. And Solomon wasn't just the temple that made it special, it was the device. And by the time the Jews got back to the temple 70 years later, they weren't allowed to take that. They were forced to set the Israelis free, but if you read the rest of the book of Ezra, it's a very political book about all the wrangling and all the different things, and of all the different arguments of why they should not be allowed to build that temple. The people feared that temple. You should not do it, you should not do it, you should not do it. And people didn't fear the temple just because of bricks and stones. They feared the old technology. And that's why we don't find none of that stuff in Israel. Number one, Nebuchadnezzar totally destroyed Jerusalem. He razed it to the ground. He left not one building standing, according to the book. And he took everything of value except for the broken pots. Okay, and when they went back, they weren't allowed to have that stuff. They were allowed to rebuild the temple, but they had to make concessions. It's a very political book. They weren't going to allow them to have any kind of like special whatever. And that was the point where the religion really started to change. It actually changed way before that, in the time of Solomon himself, because that's when they rejected the book of Enoch. That's why they put the Enoch in the Dead Sea Scrolls, all them Dead Sea Scrolls. Anybody remember those? Well, that was all the stuff they were protecting from the purge of eliminating important books from the Bible. But King Solomon took copies of all that Old Testament shit up until his time with him to Ethiopia. Solomon lived out his days in Ethiopia because when he wanted to marry that woman, Solomon was single. She was his first wife, his only wife. But the Jews profaned it because they didn't want a black queen, because that meant there'd be black heirs, and then after Solomon, the blacks would be their kings, and the Jews wasn't having that. And so that all that hatred and all that stuff goes all the way back to time of King Solomon. King Solomon interpreted the book of Enoch, I'm sure, the same way that I do, that the world was black and Noah was white, and that the Hebrews were special because they were from Noah. And pretty much everybody that's not Hebrew was a devil spawn. But the Jews rejected that, so we kind of all been corrupted ever since. That's why Satan controls the world. Or did, until the apocalypse. By the time you guys get to this video, it might even be kicking. If it's not, it will be soon. But yeah, that's a big part of it, is because for centuries, all the way back to the time of King Solomon, they've been editing and removing this shit. Forever.